The first time I saw the woman in the photograph, my mother had been dead for 3 days. I was sitting on the floor of her bedroom, surrounded by the things she had spent 30 years collecting and almost never throwing away. Old birthday cards. Receipts from shops that no longer existed. A broken watch. 3 bottles of the same perfume. Photographs, so many photographs. My aunt was downstairs, arguing quietly with my father about the funeral. I wasn't listening. I was going through my mother's things because I didn't know what else to do. Then I found the photograph. It was old, the corners were bent and the white border had turned yellow. My father was standing on one side, my mother was beside him, and I was in the middle. I was 6 years old. I smiled when I saw myself. I still had my 2 front teeth missing. My hair was tied into 2 uneven ponytails. I remembered that dress. My mother had made it herself. I remembered almost everything about that period of my childhood, but I didn't remember the woman standing behind me. She had one hand resting gently on my shoulder. She wasn't smiling at the camera. She was looking at me. I turned the photograph over. There was a date written on the back. June 17, 2006. Underneath it, in my mother's handwriting, were 4 words. She saved your life. I stared at them. Then I read them again. I didn't know who the woman was, but apparently my mother did. I carried the photograph downstairs. My aunt was standing in the kitchen. I held it up. Who is she? My aunt looked at the photograph and immediately went quiet, not confused, not curious, afraid, I noticed. Who is she? My aunt took the photograph from my hand. Where did you find this? In Mom's room. She turned it over. Her face changed when she saw the words. She saved your life. I pointed at the woman. Who is she? My aunt put the photograph on the counter. Someone your mother knew? That's not an answer. It is the only answer I can give you. Why? She looked at me. Because your mother wanted you to remember her life, not everything that happened in it. I didn't understand. What does that mean? Nothing. Auntie, she sighed. Leave it alone. That was when I knew I wouldn't. That night I couldn't sleep. I placed the photograph beside my bed. I kept staring at the woman's face. There was something about her. Something familiar, not her face, her expression. The way she was looking at me, like she was worried, like she knew something terrible was about to happen. Around 2 in the morning, I got up. I opened one of my mother's old boxes. I didn't know what I was searching for. I found her medical papers, school records, my birth certificate, old insurance documents, and then an envelope. My name was written on it, not my mother's. Mine, for my daughter. Open only when you are ready. My hands began shaking. I opened it. There was one sheet of paper, only a few lines. My mother's handwriting. If you ever find the photograph, you will probably want to know who she was, before you ask your father. Please remember this, asterisk, he was not trying to take you away from me. He was trying to keep you safe. I stopped. I read it again, then I turned the page. There was nothing else. I went downstairs. My father was sitting alone in the living room. I placed the photograph in front of him. He looked at it. His face went completely still. Who is she? He didn't answer. Dad. He picked up the photograph. His fingers trembled. She shouldn't have kept this. Who is she? He looked at me. Her name was Sarah. Was. She moved away. Why? He didn't answer. I sat opposite him. Mom wrote that she saved my life. My father looked down. She did. What happened? He was silent. Then he said, you were 6. I know. That night your mother collapsed. I frowned. Why? She hadn't been sleeping properly. She wasn't eating. She was overwhelmed. Was she sick? Yes. What kind? He hesitated. Depression, severe anxiety. She was getting help. I looked at the photograph. And Sarah, she was helping your mother. How? She used to come over. Why didn't I know her? Because she was gone before you were old enough to remember her. But I do remember her. My father looked up. I froze. You do? I closed my eyes. For a second I saw something, a blue scarf, a woman's hand, a hallway, someone kneeling in front of me, a voice saying, don't be afraid. I opened my eyes. My father was staring at me. What did you remember? I don't know. He stood. Don't force yourself. Why? Because you were very young. What happened that night? He looked away. Your mother and I had an argument. About what? About you. My stomach tightened. What about me? She believed I was going to send you away. Were you? He closed his eyes. For a while I thought you needed to stay with your grandmother. Why? Because your mother wasn't well. I stared at him. And Mom thought you were taking me away. Yes. Forever? No. But she thought you were. He nodded. I understood why my mother had been frightened, but something still didn't make sense. If you were trying to help her, why did Sarah disappear? My father didn't answer. Dad, finally he said, because your mother asked her to. That wasn't what I expected. Why? Asked Sarah. I stared at him. You know where she is? I haven't spoken to her in 20 years. That's not what I asked. He looked at me, then he gave me an address. The next morning, I drove across the city. I didn't tell my aunt. I didn't tell my father. I didn't even tell myself what I expected to find. The address was a small house on a quiet street. There was a blue gate. I stood outside for almost 5 minutes before knocking. An older woman opened the door. Her hair was gray. She looked tired. But the moment she saw me, her face changed. She whispered, Lily? I froze. Nobody had called me that in years. Only my family knew that nickname. How do you know me? She didn't answer. I held up the photograph. Her eyes immediately filled with tears. You shouldn't have come. Are you Sarah? She nodded. Why did my mother never tell me about you? Sarah looked at the photograph. Because she was trying to protect you. From what? From remembering. She opened the door. Come inside. I followed her. We sat across from each other. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I asked, what happened on June 17? Sarah looked down. Your mother called me. Why? She was frightened. Of my father? No. Then what? Of herself. I didn't understand. Sarah continued. Your mother had been struggling for a long time. I know. No, you know the word. You don't know what it felt like for her. She looked at me. She loved you so intensely that she was terrified of failing you. I felt tears forming. What happened that night? Your parents argued. About me? Yes. Was my father going to send me away? He wanted you to stay with your grandmother temporarily. Why? Because your mother wasn't sleeping. She had become overwhelmed. She was scared of being alone with you. I swallowed. Did she hurt me? Sarah immediately shook her head. Never. Then why was everyone so afraid? Because your mother was afraid she might. I looked down. Sarah continued. She hadn't eaten properly for days. She was exhausted. She kept saying she was becoming like her own mother. My grandmother? Yes, I remembered my grandmother, the kind woman I knew. But Sarah explained that my grandmother had struggled with her own emotional problems. She could be loving one day and unpredictable the next. My mother had spent her childhood trying to keep peace. And when she became a mother herself, she became terrified that history would repeat itself. That night, Sarah said, your mother took too much of her medication. I stared at her. Was it intentional? No, she overdosed. She was exhausted. She wanted to sleep. What happened? She collapsed. And I was there? Sarah nodded. You found her? No. Then who? You did. I stopped breathing. What? You were the one who called for help. I shook my head. I was 6. I know. How could I? You couldn't reach the phone. She smiled sadly. You ran outside. I remembered a door, rain, my bare feet, a neighbor's porch. Someone asking me what was wrong. Then Sarah, running toward me. I covered my mouth. The memory was coming back, not all of it, but enough. My mother was inside. Yes, you came because I found a neighbor. Yes, and then we called the ambulance. I stared at Sarah. Did my mother survive? Yes. Then why did she write that you saved my life? Sarah looked at me. Because I did more than call an ambulance. What did you do? I stayed. I frowned. That's it? No, she looked down. Your mother was taken to the hospital. Your father arrived shortly afterward. What happened between them? They were both terrified. Did they fight? Yes. About me? Yes. Again, Sarah nodded. Your father believed your mother needed professional care. And she refused? She was ashamed. Why? Because she thought needing help made her a bad mother. I closed my eyes. That sentence hurt more than I expected. Sarah continued. Your father said he wanted you to stay somewhere safe while your mother recovered. And Mom thought he was taking me away. Yes. So what happened? Your mother asked me to take you to your grandmother. Why? She trusted me. I looked at her. Then why did you disappear? Sarah was silent. Finally, she said. Because your mother made me promise something. What? That I would stay away from you. Why? Because she wanted you to have a normal childhood. That doesn't make sense. It did to her. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She said, if she remembers me, she'll remember that night. I looked down. She wanted me to forget? Yes, but why? Because she didn't want your first memory of a crisis to become the story of your life. I sat there quietly. Then I asked, did she ever get better? Sarah smiled. She did. That surprised me. Really? Yes. How? Slowly. Therapy, medication, time, support, and my father. They had rebuilt their marriage slowly, not perfectly, but honestly. My mother had learned to talk about her fear instead of hiding it. My father had learned that protecting someone didn't always mean making decisions for them. And Sarah had stayed away. For me, for my mother, for the promise. I looked at the photograph. Then why did Mom leave it? Sarah smiled sadly. Because she knew you were finally old enough. Old enough for what? To understand that what happened to her was not your fault. I began crying. I spent years thinking my childhood was perfect. It wasn't perfect. No, Sarah shook her head. It was real. I looked at her. What happened after that night? Your mother asked me to leave. Did you? Yes. Did you want to? No. Then why? Because I loved her. She paused. And because sometimes loving someone means respecting the boundary they need to heal. I looked down. 20 years. 20 years without knowing this woman existed. Then I remembered something. The photograph, Sarah smiled. Your mother took it. When? The morning before I left. Why? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She wanted one picture of the people who got through the worst night of their lives. I looked at the photograph again. My mother, my father, me, Sarah, all four of us. I suddenly noticed something I had never seen before. My mother's hand was holding Sarah's. Behind us, my father was looking at them. Not angrily, not suspiciously. He was smiling. I turned the photograph over. There was more writing beneath the first sentence. I hadn't noticed because the paper had been folded. I unfolded it. My mother's handwriting filled the bottom. One day, my daughter will wonder why I never told her about Sarah. I hope by then she will understand that I wasn't hiding a shameful secret. I was protecting a beautiful one. My tears fell onto the photograph. I looked at Sarah. Mom wanted me to find you. Yes. Did she know she was dying? Sarah looked away. She knew she was getting weaker. I swallowed. Did she talk about me? All the time. What did she say? Sarah smiled. She said you became exactly the person she hoped you would become. I laughed through my tears. What person was that? She said, someone who doesn't spend her whole life being afraid of becoming me. I couldn't speak. I stayed at Sarah's house for hours. We talked about my mother. About childhood, about the years I had missed. And before I left, Sarah gave me something, a small blue scarf. I recognized it immediately, the one from my memory. You kept it? Sarah nodded. Your mother gave it to me? I held it against my face. It smelled like nothing now, just old fabric, but somehow it felt like home. When I returned home, my father was sitting in the same chair. I sat beside him. I saw Sarah. He nodded. What did she tell you? Everything. He looked down. Are you angry? I thought about it. No. Why not? Because I finally understand. He was quiet, then I asked, did Mom ever forgive herself? My father looked toward the window. She was learning. Was she happy? He smiled. Yes, that answer mattered more than I expected. She was happy. She was. I looked at the photograph. Then why didn't you tell me? Because she asked me not to. You always did what she asked. He smiled sadly. Not always. I looked at him. Sometimes I thought I was protecting her. And sometimes I was protecting myself. I understood. He had been ashamed too, not because he had done something terrible. Because he had been afraid. And he had spent years wondering whether he had handled that night correctly. I reached for his hand. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, you know what your mother told me the morning after? What? She said, one day she'll understand. Understand what? He looked at me. That none of us knew what we were doing. I smiled through my tears. That's true, he laughed softly. It was the first time I'd heard him laugh since my mother died. A month later, I went back to Sarah. This time I didn't knock like a stranger. I walked through the blue gate. She opened the door. I held up the old photograph. I think you belong in my life now, she smiled. I think I always did. I hugged her, and for the first time I didn't feel like I was meeting a stranger from my mother's past. I felt like I was finally meeting someone from my own. That night, I placed the photograph beside my mother's bed. I looked at it for a long time. For years, I had thought a family photograph was supposed to capture a happy moment. Now, I knew better. Sometimes a photograph captures something much more important. It captures the people who were there when everything almost fell apart. My mother had been afraid of becoming her own mother. My father had been afraid of losing his wife and daughter. Sarah had been afraid that leaving would hurt us, and I had been too young to understand any of it, but somehow we survived, not because anyone was perfect. Not because somebody came along and fixed everything, We survived because people asked for help, because people learned, because people forgave, because love, when it is real, isn't always beautiful. Sometimes it is frightened, sometimes it is confused, sometimes it makes the wrong decision for the right reason. And sometimes it means stepping away from someone you love because they need space to become themselves again. I used to look at that photograph and wonder who the woman was. Now I know. Her name was Sarah. She was the woman who held my hand on the worst night of my childhood, the woman who kept a promise to my mother for 20 years, the woman who disappeared without abandoning me. And perhaps the greatest thing she saved wasn't my life. It was my understanding of my mother. Because before that photograph, I remembered my mother as the woman who raised me. After it, I understood her as a woman who had once been frightened, exhausted, imperfect, and human. A woman who struggled. A woman who got help. A woman who became better. A woman who loved me enough to admit she needed help. And suddenly, her greatest secret didn't feel like a secret anymore. It felt like a gift. A reminder that we are not doomed to become the people who hurt us. We can break patterns. We can ask for help. We can make mistakes and still become good people. And we can love our children deeply without pretending we were never afraid. Sometimes the most important thing a mother can give her daughter isn't a perfect childhood. It's the courage to become something different from the pain that came before her. I still keep the photograph, but I don't keep it hidden anymore. It's sitting on my shelf, my mother, my father. 6-year-old me, and Sarah, 4 people who survived one terrible night, 4 people who didn't know how the story would end. And whenever I look at it, I think about the words my mother wrote on the back. She saved your life. For years, I thought she meant Sarah saved me that night. Now I know she meant something more. Sarah saved me from believing that my mother's struggle was something shameful. My father saved me from believing that love always means knowing what to do. My mother saved me from believing that our past decides who we become. And somehow, without knowing it, they all taught me the same thing. You can be hurt without becoming cruel. You can be afraid without giving up. And you can make mistakes without becoming your mistakes. I wish my mother were here so I could tell her I finally understand. But maybe she already knew I would. After all, she left me the photograph, and she knew exactly where to leave it.